I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Unplugged. Today I'm doing a Mads Mikkelsen tier list. This one has been long in the works. I wanted to make sure that I saw a wide range of his films, including a lot of his Danish films. But of course, he still has a lot more that I have yet to see. So it's possible that a Mads Mikkelsen tier list part 2 could come in the future. Look, he has a new one out that I'm looking forward to. A second Western, and I say second because I do have his first Western here, The Salvation. We'll be talking about that one later on. We have 17 of his films here, or I guess 15 of his films, one video game, and one TV show. And these are in a randomized order, except for Death Stranding, the video game on the list. I wanted to put this one first because it has the caveat of it's unfinished. I have not finished Death Stranding yet. It's in the works, so I won't be actually ranking it on the tier list, but I wanted to mention it briefly because it's a cool project. I enjoy it. I'm a big Hideo Kojima fan, especially of Metal Gear, but I'm enjoying Death Stranding a lot as well as I work my way through it, but it's not going on this tier list. It might go in part 2 because I will have surely finished it by then. Okay, the actual tier list starts off with Men and Chicken. This is one of his Danish films. It's with his frequent collaborator Anders Thomas Jensen and his frequent co-star in the Anders Thomas Jensen movies, Nikolaj Likus. I'm a big fan of both of them. Nikolaj Likus doesn't really have any footprint in American movies like Mads Mikkelsen does. He kind of straddles both. But they're both very good, and they're both total chameleon actors. And really all you need to do to see the full talent and ability of these two actors is watch their collaborations with Anders Thomas Jensen, this one writer and director who frequently casts the two of them as his two leads. And even though he works with the same actors, they play completely different characters every single time. The other ones we're going to be talking about today that feature the Samuel team are Adam's Apples and Riders of Justice. And there's another prominent one from that little trio called The Green Butchers, which I haven't seen yet, but I am very much looking forward to whenever I do eventually get around to it, and you can bet that will definitely be on part 2. I also want to mention Nikolaj Likus's sort of like detective murder mystery series, Department Q. That's a long-running film series over in Denmark, and that's a fun series. I've seen 2 out of the 4 or 5, but I know there's some controversy with one of them where the actors and director and stuff were recast, and there's some weirdness going on there, but that's neither here nor there. Men and Chicken is a really wild movie. As you can tell from the poster, this is not a normal movie. I've actually talked about this one before over on the main channel, Brickwall Pictures. I once ran a little Mads Mikkelsen week where I reviewed 3 of his movies, and Men and Chicken was one of them. So you can check out that video to hear me give a few more thoughts on this movie. I really enjoy it. It's very funny, but it's also very dark. It has this really sinister undercurrent, and it feels like it could kind of become a full-blown horror movie at any moment. And there are scenes where it's in horror territory. But for the most part, it's a really weird drama that's very funny throughout. Mads Mikkelsen is hilarious in this one. It's his goofiest role. By far, goofy is not really an adjective that would apply to any of his other characters here, I don't think. Including his other Anders Thomas Jensen movies. Maybe Adam's Apples a little bit, but definitely not Riders of Justice. He's very serious in that one. But he is goofy as hell in Men and Chicken, and he's very funny. I think it's a B tier. It's a strong B, though. It's closer to an A than a C, much closer. But I think it's in a B. Next up is Casino Royale, the film that most American audiences are likely familiar with him from, though maybe that belongs to Rogue One these days, perhaps, since it's, Star Wars, and he's in the MCU with Doctor Strange, so I don't know. But Casino Royale was definitely a big defining role for him, a big breakthrough role. It falls into that trope of you rarely ever see someone with a foreign accent in an American movie unless they're playing the villain, and it's no exception here in Casino Royale. But it did give him enough cachet to kind of extend beyond that, and it gave him the cachet, the sort of renown for people who liked his performance here to seek out his other Danish movies, which is what I hope more people do and what I hope I can encourage some people to do if you only know him from his American movies, because his Danish films in general are all the cut above any of his American work, really. But Casino Royale is really good. I think it's a C. Again, it's higher C. It's a lot closer to a B than a D. And honestly, I don't know. You could give it a B. I could be swayed to a B, but right now I'm feeling a C for it. His role is really good, but the way his character, let's say, exits the movie, the way his storyline wraps up is a little anticlimactic, I think. He kind of doesn't get a worthwhile send-off for how good of a presence he has until that point. And then Casino Royale is a very uneven film. I feel like The opening is incredible. That parkour chase on the construction site, incredible. The best action scene in any James Bond movie, I would say. But then other parts of the movie are a little less memorable. I don't know. It's pretty good. It was Daniel Craig's first at-bat in the Bond tuxedo, and he did a good job. He proved a lot of naysayers wrong, I would say. But then his track record with 007 in general, he was like 50-50 kind of on, is the movie going to be, pretty good, or is it going to be terrible? So I think I'm going to leave it in C. But I think if you put it in B, that's totally reasonable. Next up, Riders of Justice. I mentioned this one briefly. Riders of Justice I really like. If you see this poster, it looks like, that movie that Liam Neeson and Bruce Willis have made a million of, where it's like straight to red box, boomer shooter kind of thing. It looks like, oh no, is Mads Mikkelsen doing one of those now? Is that where his career's at? But this is a deceptive poster. And I would say even the trailer is a bit deceptive too, because it kind of fits what the vibe that the poster's giving off. Riders of Justice is a much more complex, like, revenge drama in actuality. There is some action in it. You could technically call it an action movie, like there are multiple shootouts, technically speaking, but it's not really the focus of the film. The action is very much secondary. What's first and foremost is the social commentary, but really even more than that, just like really complex characters and complex motivations for those characters. And then it becomes like a sort of a morality tale of people have revenge motives to do these things, and they don't go about them in a way that is like, there's lots of revenge movies where we get into gray areas, but this one more than others, it explores that in a really complex way where it doesn't take it doesn't give you any easy answers, and it doesn't make any easy choices throughout the narrative. It's another one that I have a full review for over on Brickwall Pictures, so you can head over there if you want to hear some more. I think it's another B. And just like Men and Chicken, it's like strong B, but I don't think I would go quite all the way to A with it, but it is really good. Mads Mikkelsen is excellent in this. He's very stoic and intense and intimidating. Nikolai Likus, I would say, actually steals the show from him in this one. He's fully transformative in that one, in Riders of Justice. Really good stuff. And then the whole supporting cast is really good too. If you watch his other Danish films and other Danish films in general, you'll recognize some of their familiar faces. It's kind of like a deconstruction of the kind of movie that it appears to be from the poster. It's like an anti-action-y revenge movie. Okay, the posters are in a different position because the software I used for this crashed on me randomly, and I had to put them all back in place. Moving on, we're going to go to Doctor Strange now. This one, not good. Not good at all. I didn't plan on ever watching this because I was already all out on the MCU by the time this one came around, which I guess was pretty early on, but like as soon as the first Avengers came out, I was like, not for me. But I did see this one. I was kind of against my will. It was shoved in front of me, and I did see the entire thing. And it's awful. I hate it. I think it's an F tier. It's terrible. I don't begrudge Mads for doing it. Like, I don't think it's like, him selling out or anything. I think what this does and what Rogue One does, I mean, maybe he just likes the movies because obviously they're very successful and he just, whatever. But I think the other thing is it gives him the star power to go back and make these tiny Danish movies and have more eyes on them, have more people seek them out than would otherwise. So they serve a good purpose in that way. Okay, next up is Adam's Apples. This one I reviewed a long time ago, but I don't think that review is still up. But at any rate, it's a good film. It's an interesting one. I think it was the first of the Anders Thomas Jensen films I had seen, and his style was like a little confusing to me at first. I feel like I didn't get his sense of humor as much in Adam's Apples as I did in Men and Chicken later on. I don't know if that's a case of the latter film being better at communicating its tone, or a case of me just like not really knowing what I was getting into when I watched Adam's Apples way back. Because I definitely remember laughing a fair bit and there being plenty of funny moments, but I also remember there being points where I was like, is that supposed to be funny, or is that like unintentionally funny? So I'd be open to rewatching Adam's Apples, but even as it stands, it's a really enjoyable film. Mads is really good. He's actually not the protagonist. He's more of he is a lead, though. He's like this naive priest with a really interesting backstory who runs basically a church where like convicts can come to work as part of their sentence or part of their like parole or whatever, which is an interesting premise to begin with. And then the titular Adam is this other guy on the poster, this bald guy who is just absolute terrible human being, which is, the point of the movie. He's just like completely despicable and unlikable. He's like an open, like neo-Nazi skinhead guy, and he's like really caustic and horrible throughout the entire film. There's a really interesting dynamic between them because Mads is constantly like trying to see the good in people and trying to reform people, and it becomes a question of like, can you even reform somebody this bad, this evil? Is there any redemption to be had? And then it's saying some interesting things about like religion and the way that religion can and cannot affect people in different ways. It's a really interesting film. I think it's another B. I guess I give all the Anders Thomas Jensen films, I kind of put them all in similar territory, I suppose. If you're going to watch one out of these, I would probably say Men in Chicken, unless you're like a big action movie fan, in which case you might get a lot more out of the deconstruction going on in Riders of Justice. But all three are well worth watching. Next up is After the Wedding. This one didn't do quite so much for me. It's not one of his big Hollywood films, but it's not one of his like quintessential Danish films either. This one is directed by Suzanne Beyer, who I think is mostly known for like TV work these days, like lots of like English language TV work. Like she did that Night Manager TV show, for example, and some other high-profile projects. After the Wedding, just kind of didn't do it for me. I didn't find the drama all that compelling. It's like competently put together and everything. I would not say it's bad. It was just very like uninteresting. The drama at play didn't compel me, and the characters I didn't find that complex or interesting. So it just falls a bit flat for me. I think it's a D, and on my scale, a D is like has some redeeming qualities. It's like you can watch it, you won't be blown away, but don't expect too much. Okay, next up is Hannibal. This one is a TV show, ran for 3 seasons on NBC somehow. I don't know how the fuck this aired on NBC. It does not feel like a show that NBC would ever have a hand in putting out, because it's way darker. And like this thing gets gory as hell. You wouldn't expect that from an NBC show, but it gets there. Going into the show, if you're not familiar with it, you might be like, oh, don't we have enough Hannibal Lecter stuff? Like this Manhunter, and then there's all the Anthony Hopkins ones, and like all that other stuff. But this carves out such a unique space for it. It feels completely different from Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, Manhunter, Hannibal. The movie that's called Hannibal that is not the same story as the TV show that's called Hannibal, even though they do overlap. Hannibal is specifically adapted from Red Dragon, is what it says in all of the opening credits. And like, there's no Clarice Starling. You have Will Graham, who's the protagonist of Red Dragon. But then you also get into Hannibal, a.k.a. the third book. And it kind of like jumps over Silence of the Lambs. But you do get into the whole plot of Hannibal, basically, in the third season, where all the stuff in Italy, all the stuff with Mason Verger, that's all from the third book. And I've read the books. The first 2 are great, Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs. The third book is okay, but it's a big step down from the first 2. All the stuff from the third book, the Hannibal book, is done way better in the Hannibal TV show. Really elevates the material. And honestly, it really takes its sweet time getting to the Red Dragon stuff. Like, Will Graham's there from the beginning. He's the protagonist of Red Dragon, but the actual Red Dragon serial killer, the one that the book is named after, doesn't come into the picture until season 3. So, like, don't hold your breath if you're really interested in that serial killer specifically, because they make you wait for it. They basically didn't get to it until they found out that they were, like, not going to get renewed. And they were like, oh, shit, I guess we got to get to it finally. But they do a really good job, and it somehow doesn't feel rushed, even though it's only, like, the second half of the last season. Anyway, really well done. Mads Mikkelsen, like, Anthony Hopkins is completely iconic as Hannibal Lecter. And then, honestly, even Brian Cox is great in Manhunter. He's a much more, like, reserved, understated kind of Hannibal, but he leaves a big impression, too. But then Mads Mikkelsen, he feels so different from either of them and so memorable. And he's just captivating. He's a much more subtle Hannibal and a much more, like, I think he's, like, more frightening, more intimidating. Part of that comes down to him being, like, out of captivity throughout the entire thing, which he, is not in the film versions. And they make him kind of, like, action-y, but, there's some pros and cons there. This TV show, for, like, an NBC show, way better than it had any right to be. I won't go all the way to S with it, because it does fall into some, like, procedural trappings of, like, oh, it's a killer of the week kind of thing. They move away from that a little bit the more the show moves on. But even when it's killer of the week, it's, like, executed better than any other like Killer of the Week show. Like comparing this to like, I don't know, Law and Order or whatever is just night and day. It's a million times better. I think it's an A as a TV show. Really, really good show. Next up is Pusher. Every once in a while, people ask me to make a Nicholas Winding Refn tier list. And I've been holding off because I know it's just going to like make people mad because I don't really like Nicholas Winding Refn all that much. Mads is in 2 of these movies here that we got. He's also in Pusher 2, but I haven't seen Pusher 2 yet. And there's a third Pusher movie, but I'm pretty sure Mads is not in that one. Pusher, to its credit, I do like it more than most Nicholas Winding Refn movies. But I think it's just a C to me. It's not like amazing. It doesn't blow me away or anything. Nicholas Winding Refn, I think most of his movies are vastly overrated, in my opinion. They just kind of don't do it for me, even though they seem like they'd be up my alley. Pusher is pretty good. It's okay. But I don't know. It's not all that memorable to me. The story doesn't feel that unique. The filmmaking doesn't feel that unique. It feels like a pretty standard, drug dealer or gangster kind of movie. This one just happens to be set in Denmark, which does give it a little something. And it's, it's got more of like a young, like, different kind of edge to it. But it's, I don't know, it's not that standout to me. And then we got the second Refn film right in a row, just randomly, Valhalla Rising. This movie feels like it should be so up my alley. Like a movie with very little dialogue, starring Mads Mikkelsen, where it's like really violent and full of action and like brutal, and it's all about like mythology and like visual storytelling. That sounds so up my alley, and it just doesn't do it for me. I don't think it's bad. It just does not grip me at all. I find myself like at arm's length to this movie. Refn's directing style just does not pull me in. I don't get the experience that it's trying to give me and that I want from it. Honestly, it's a D for me. I think people are going to really disagree on that one, and, hey, I'm glad you enjoy it more than I do. Okay, next up is The Salvation. This is an interesting one. It's a Danish Western. You don't get a whole lot of those. I think they filmed it in, South Africa. And there's a story where Mads Mikkelsen almost, died of an infection on set because he cut his finger on this big, knife that he bought locally, and it got infected because they were filming out in the desert with, sand and wind and everything blowing in his wound and all that. And he almost had to get it amputated. Anyway, Salvation. It's always interesting to see Westerns made in other countries, because the Western is a distinctly American genre. So it's always interesting to see other cultures filter the tropes of the genre, the stylings, the thematic elements, and the typical plot beats, the archetypes, through their own film culture. It's always really interesting to me. I love The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I bring that movie up all the time, that South Korean Western. Absolutely love it. And, Westerns in other countries. There's a lot of gems out there. The Salvation, I wouldn't quite call this one a gem. I think it's a C tier. It's so close to being, really good, because I would say that the filmmaking is really strong here. Really solid directing, really great sense of, tone and atmosphere and place. Good performances, not just from Mads, but from the other characters as well. And the violence, there's not that much of it, but it's really brutal and punchy when it happens. The thing that holds it back, however, is that the story is so cliche. And it comes close to doing that thing that I just mentioned, where you take, the archetypes of the genre and you filter them and you spin them into something different, and it just kind of doesn't. It ends up feeling like a story you've seen a million times before, and that really does hold it back. But this one's still worth watching. And Mads has another Western out now called, I think, Promised Land, or something similar to that. And I'm very much looking forward to that one. I want to see if that's a step up from this one, because this one has so much potential when it comes close to getting there. Okay, next up, Rogue One. When they first rebooted Star Wars, or not even rebooted, but revived the franchise, I went into the episode 7 or whatever, and I was like, it felt like a Marvel movie. And I gave it one more chance, and I watched Rogue One because people were like, oh, this one's actually really good. And I thought it sucked. I really do think it's an F-tier movie, honestly. The reshoots are glaringly obvious, and I get absolutely nothing from, the lead character, from the conflict that's supposed to be at play, from the stakes. I'm not a spectacle person. I mentioned that in, all of these tier lists, and I'm not a spectacle-driven person. Because these kinds of movies, they do have a big audience, obviously. It just doesn't do it for me. This was my two strikes, you're out for the modern era of Star Wars. I've not gone back, and I don't plan to. Okay, next up is Age of Uprising. The full title is Age of Uprising, The Legend of Michael Colehouse. Or maybe the story of, The Legend of Michael Colehouse. This is an interesting film. It's got a striking poster, and it's based on a true story, but I think probably very loosely, I'm not sure. He's got like a sword on the back. You might think it's like a fantasy thing, given, the legend and all that. It's not a fantasy thing. It's like very realistic. And there's also like guns and stuff. The sword is just like a, whatever, like a holdover, an older thing. And it is a story of an uprising, though, not like a one man's uprising, but like Mads Mikkelsen kind of leading an uprising. It's like a farmers' rebellion kind of story, going up against like castle era oligarchs or whatever. It's an interesting premise. It's told in a very languid way, however, that is a bit too protracted for its own good, is a bit too silent and stilted for its own good. It's a very artsy film, but it's a film that feels artsy in a sort of manufactured way, where like it's trying really hard to be artsy instead of actually just genuinely being artsy. It kind of feels like the director is making choices. I don't know. I always hesitate to use the term pretentious, but this one comes off a little bit pretentious. Not the movie as a whole, but some of the like cinematography choices and directorial choices. It comes close to having an interesting relationship to the way it presents violence, because it builds up to these like really violent sequences and then doesn't really show you any of the violence. It's almost doing what that You Were Never Really Here movie did with Joaquin Phoenix, where like it crafts a scenario for violence and then it kind of deliberately withholds it from you. And it works better in the latter movie. It almost works here, but like not quite, because it's just such a long build up to it, and then you kind of don't get any payoff. It's not like you get something instead of the violence that I was building towards. It's kind of like it just sort of fizzles out. It doesn't go anywhere. I don't know. This film, it's not terrible. I think it's another D. It's closer to an E than the others. But I think it's probably interesting enough to still get a D, even though I would put it lower than either of these two. Okay, next up, let's grab The Arctic, which is higher up. This is kind of a one-man show for Mads Mikkelsen, at least for the most part. And it's directed by a YouTuber, I think. It's that mystery guitar guy or whatever. I think that's his movie. And it's a type of movie that always sounds interesting, like on paper, but I never really get much out of in practice. Like, it's very similar to that All Is Lost movie with Robert Redford, where it's like one guy in a desperate survival situation, and it's just about how does he survive? How does he get through it? And I find those kinds of movies just very like wheel spinny, if you know what I mean. They're kind of like treading water. I mean, we're literally in All Is Lost, I guess, but they're kind of just like treading water in general. Yeah, it just feels like they kind of go nowhere. It feels very one note. It feels like it presents an interesting predicament, and then without anyone to talk to and without like a complicated character to sink his teeth into. Like Mads Mikkelsen, he's always so good, but in this one he feels like he just like doesn't really have much to work with. It's very like physically intense role. Like he's out in the snow, he's doing manual labor, but he doesn't have like much of a character to sink his teeth into. So it kind of feels like he's just playing, guy in snow. This one I think I will go all the way down to E with. That being said, it is still well made. It's just like delivering absolutely nothing. It's as blank of a slate as the untouched snowy landscape. Next up is The Hunt. This one I can enthusiastically give the S tier. This is a film that's on my top 250, which, by the way, if you missed it, my top 250 best films of all time video is available on the main channel over at Brickwall Pictures. The Hunt is fantastic, and not only do I hold it up as one of the best films ever made, I hold Mads Mikkelsen's lead performance as one of the absolute greatest performances that an actor has ever given. He is unbelievably good in this film, but the film also just delivers on every other level. Like, it's directed by Thomas Vinterberg, who is in top form. His directorial choices, 100%, are exactly what is called for at every moment without ever being distracting or flashy. He's always elevating the source material, which is itself on its own phenomenal. It's an incredible script with a really hard-hitting premise and social commentary. This is just an all-around excellent film. If you haven't seen The Hunt, highly, highly, highly recommend it. And next up, coincidentally, we have the other Thomas Vinterberg film that the two of them worked on. So same director and a lot of the same cast, not just Mads, but a lot of his co-stars come back as well. This one's another round. This was quite a few years later. This one was recent. It was the Best Foreign Film winner, I think, at the Oscars like 2 or 3 years ago. And fully deserving, I think. It's another incredible film. I don't think it's quite as good as The Hunt. I think I'd only go to A with this one, not quite to S. But it is really close. This is a fantastic film. If you see the trailers, you might think it's like a comedy. And the premise is very funny. It's about a group of teachers who decide to be drunk 24/7 as like a social experiment. And there is a lot of fun to be had with that, but it's more like fun versus funny, if you know what I mean. Like, you're going to have a great time with this group of friends, and you really feel the like fraternity between them. And you feel the fun that they're having. It's infectious in that way. But don't expect to be like laughing raucously. It's not a Judd Apatow movie or whatever. It's still a pretty hard-hitting drama at the end of the day. And it's really, really good. Also, incredible ending. Mads Mikkelsen has like a dance number. That's where this poster is taken from. This is like mid-dance when he's chugging the champagne. It's a great dance sequence. One of cinema's like great unexpected dance numbers. And last up we have At Eternity's Gate. This one is more a smaller-ish role for Mads Mikkelsen. He's really only in like one scene. It's mostly Willem Dafoe who's the star of this one. He's playing Vincent van Gogh. Mads Mikkelsen plays a priest, actually just like Adam Zappos. He plays a priest that Van Gogh goes to visit. They have like a really interesting philosophical kind of question, not just about religion, but about like kind of life in general, which is really interesting. And Mads leaves a huge impression in his one scene. But also, like, Dafoe is excellent in this. He was Oscar nominated for the role and fully deserves it. It's directed by Julian Schnabel, who I'm a big fan of. I think that guy's super underrated as a filmmaker. I mean, his films aren't really underrated. Like this film and The Diving Bell and The Butterfly both get a lot of attention, and they're both fantastic films. Just Schnabel himself, I feel like his name isn't really brought up as often as maybe it should be. Excellent piece of work. I think it's another A-tier movie. So yeah, The Hunt is his best, but we've got lots of A's, B's, C's, and like all of these, I mean, Pusher's closer to like rounding down, but the rest of these are all closer to rounding up than they are to rounding down. So, keep that in mind. Anyway, Mads Mikkelsen, love the guy. He's always good, even in bad movies. You can subscribe if you feel like it, check out more tier lists, whatever. So long.